All right, so we're going to start talking about the managing ecosystems. This is kind of tying all together. A lot of this is terrestrial. There's some of the aquatic ecology thrown in as well, but this is really an overarching theme. How do we look at protected areas? How do we look at managing these areas, and what's the human impact on all of these areas? So this is the topics we're talking about in this video. So restoration is returning any area to its original state, or as close as you can get to its original state. Rehabilitation is trying just to get it back to being functional. So that's the difference between the two, is getting it functional or getting it back to the original state, whether that state was functional or not. Replacement is replacing it with a different type of ecosystem, and then creating the artificial, would be like artificial wetlands, artificial coral reefs, stuff like that, to work on biodiversity, flood reduction, sewage treatment, stuff like that. Okay, so focusing on forests specifically, one of the big issues right now, we kind of talked about this already actually in the biodiversity unit, was the tropical deforestation, the cutting down for urban sprawl, for people to live. They're cutting down for building and for resource use, for tourist stuff. So half of the people in the developing world, in developing countries, are short of fuel. 98% of Haiti, for example, is deforested. MIT scientists have recently found a way to make charcoal from used sugarcane, so that's a great way to reuse and recycle materials. But that's where deforestation comes in, is these developing countries where a lot of the rainforests are very short of fuel and need that for cooking, for warmth, for whatever. Okay, so we already know about the rainforests. Very high biodiversity for plants and animals, so they're equally as important for plants. The trees being cut down increase the carbon dioxide emissions. We know the photosynthesis gives off gives off oxygen and uses carbon dioxide. In developing countries, they're also cutting down trees to make way for cattle ranches and crops, and to provide roads. So at times they're not even cutting them down, but they're just burning them. There's a huge market right now for tropical hardwood. It's a very expensive wood at the moment. It's very highly sought after, very prized. And so that is leading to increase in deforestation. Okay, so in addition to all of the reasons we've talked about, that you have been told probably since kindergarten about why it's important to care for the rainforest, one of the big reasons that we focus on from an economic standpoint rather than an environmental standpoint is that medicinal plants, incredibly high concentrations, come from the rainforest. So most of our medicinal plants come from tropical rainforests and are found in tropical rainforests. And so just for the sake of medicine alone, we don't want to kill what we don't know we have yet. So to fix this problem, to help with tropical deforestation or deforestation in general, reducing demand is the first step. So don't waste. You've been, again, drilled into your head probably since kindergarten not to waste paper. Try to find alternatives for paper. So bamboo is a big alternative. It grows right now. It's increasing. It grows really fast. It can be used almost interchangeably. It's very strong, so it can be used for building and construction and stuff. And it can be replaced much more easily than trees. So you can harvest bamboo much easier and much more economically than you can a lot of trees. And then using solar ovens or other biomass to cook and to use for fuel rather than burning wood is also a way to reduce the demand. Okay. So logging. We know about the types of forests already, the old growth forests. The second growth forest is secondary succession. Tree plantations are planted stands, so they're man-made. The leading companies, China, Russia, US, India, and Japan, are leading companies in the tree plantations right now. So logging trees, you can have selective cutting where you're pulling here and there, You can have clear cutting where you take everything, or you can have strip cutting where you just take a portion of the forest but leave on either side. Selective cutting is the best at this point in time because you can see it still leaves a good growth of trees. There will be reseeding, and those trees that were cut down will be replanted even if the loggers don't plant them themselves. And in addition, it leaves a good age difference, different species, different ages, different sizes, whereas here, even this, you still have a good forest left, but you don't have, you have this big gap in the middle, so that creates more edge space. Okay, so again, closer up, selective cutting, clear cutting. Okay, so harvesting trees. Clear cutting forests, the advantages is that it does give higher lumber. You have more profit, more wood. You can reforest with fast growing trees, so it may not be the same species. Needs less skill and planning. You can just go in and cut stuff down. It's easier. But then the bad side, which I feel outweighs the good side for the clear cutting, is that it reduces biodiversity, it disrupts the ecosystem, destroys the habitat, leaves large openings, creates edge space, increases erosion and pollution, flooding, and there's not as much recreational value. So this is showing in Washington State the effects of clear cutting. Strip cutting, leaving a space. Okay, so the deforestation and logging builds roads into previously inaccessible forests, paves the way for fragmentation, destruction, and degradation. This is what, this is kind of like shows you what happens over time. So you have, your road built in, deforestation into these old growth forests, and then you end up with highway, you end up with less forests, more burning, more agriculture, more development. Okay, so deforestation can increase forest fires. Depending on the type of fire that's caused, that can either harm or benefit a forest. So a surface fire is going to burn away ground material, and it's going to release the nutrients in that soil into the atmosphere to be used by the plants. So forest fires that happen naturally are actually a good thing and help, while they may destroy the forest, they help keep the whole biome, that whole area, really healthy. Whereas, too much fire, that is what turns into a bad thing. So the man-made fires is what we're trying to avoid. The surface fires prevent the bigger ones. The crown fires are the really dangerous fires. They're very hot, a lot of underbrush. And then ground fires burn into the soil, so they smolder for days. They really mess with air quality. So those are the really dangerous kind of fires. Right here is the crown and the ground fires. And then the surface fires prevent both of those from happening as much because they burn off some of that extra, that grass, that stuff that catches fire really easily. They return the nutrients over, and so they make it less likely for these types of fires to happen. Okay, so there's a lot of controversy over forest fires right now. To reduce the fire damage, we're working on setting controlled surface fires, allowing fires to burn on public lands as long as they're not threatening life or property. And then clear areas, so give space where the fire can't jump. So if property A is really likely to catch fire at some point, you clear a space around it so that when it does catch fire, that fire will not spread to something else. But like I said, there's a lot of controversy over whether this is the best way to do it, or how so, or how much, and who's going to do it, and so on and so forth. Okay, so grasslands, overgrazing is too many animals graze for too long, exceeds the carrying capacity of that area. Half the world's livestock graze on natural grasslands called rangelands, or managed grasslands called pastures. And so those are the two differences there. Rangeland is natural, pasture is man-made. To sustain that, to keep those populations, those herds of grazers going, you have to control how many you have, so you don't have too many that are going to eat all the grass. You have to allow the grass time to come back, and then you have to restore the degraded rangeland. So give it time. You have to move your herds around, give it time to recover, space stuff out. We always need that recovery time. Okay, so this is this restored area. You can see the difference. So, the livestock had eaten it down almost nothing. They pulled that herd off and gave it some time, and in about 10 years, this is what it looks like. So there can be a huge difference. Okay, so grasslands for cattle ranches in the Midwest are very popular right now. They are trying to be preserved right now. So ranchers are trying to make their living. They don't, they obviously have to sell enough cattle to survive. So they're being paid by governments, stuff like that. They're being paid easements. So that will keep future owners from developing that area. And then putting pressure on the government to allow that area, or to mandate that area be protected. Okay, so Yellowstone National Park is protected right now. One of the most famous U.S. national parks. So the regulations vary depending on where you are. If you're in a national park, if you're in a natural area, if you're at a wildlife preserve or reserve, every kind of name has its different set of rules to go with it. So a lot of the parks have roads on them, have stores on them, lodging, camping, cabins, stuff like that. And even some of them allow resource extraction, mining, and forestry, logging and stuff. And so there's a lot of argument right now about whether all that should be allowed on national parks or whether it should be more protected. Texas state natural areas have more limited roads. They don't have a lot of buildings, very primitive camping, so you can't drive your camper in there. There's no hookup for your camper, but you can go set a tent up, and then no resource extraction allowed. So much better as far as an environmentalist standpoint. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. Okay, so nature reserves are more protected. They help sustain biodiversity. They're really good for the environment, but the economic and political stuff, there's a lot of resources in there. There's a lot of space in there that people want to use and make money off of, and so that's why the economic and the political people are opposing that. Right now, there's about 12% of the overall land mass protected. 5% is very strictly protected from any human activities. We want 20% protected, with examples of all the biomes, and this isn't even counting the aquatics or marine stuff. National parks is 1,100 national parks, but there's a lot of poaching, there's a lot of illegal stuff going on, there's a lot of legal stuff. You can go in, you can camp, you can bring your camper, you can do mining on there, you can log on there, so it's not necessarily, and then just the overuse of the tourist population, it's not necessarily as protected as we would hope it would be. Sorry, this keeps jumping around. Okay, so the stresses on the national parks, exactly what you'd expect. They're very popular, so the human presence has an impact. The trash, air pollution, off-road vehicles, logging, mining, the stuff that I've been listing, all of that puts overwhelming stress on those national parks. And then the nature reserves normally have buffer zones, so that kind of helps ease into the area and out of the area. They tend to be connected by corridors, so animals can move back and forth. Costa Rica is really well known for this. It's consolidated its parks and reserves into 8 mega reserves, so that 80% of its biodiversity is sustained. People can still go on it. I've actually hiked through. We were here, and then Arenal up here. And it was beautiful. But this country as a whole, one of the reasons it's so successful is that it is working together as a whole to preserve its biodiversity and still figure out a way for people to use it, for the tourist section, to get what they need. Okay, so urban development, again, with the overpopulated world, we'll be talking about human population next unit. Urban areas offer more job opportunities, better education, health opportunities, and they actually help protect biodiversity of natural areas because they concentrate the people away from the natural area. So these are the degradation that you see in the urban sprawl. So you can divide it up into the different categories, and you guys would probably be able to list a lot of this off the top of your head. So kind of take a look through this chart and be able to list a couple examples from each one. Again, I mean, it's nothing, it's nothing new. So let me know if you have any questions on that one. The cities as a whole threaten biodiversity because the area of the biodiversity is lost. They decrease the wild space. They increase erosion. There's no trees or very little plant life. It's an overuse of resources and a concentration of pollutants, and it spreads infectious diseases. So while there are definitely ups and downs to large cities. This shows you an example of Vegas, 1973 on this side, and then in that 27 years, the increase in population, that urban sprawl. Okay, so you see this is an interesting graphic. It kind of shows you all the inputs that have to go into a city, and then what the bad outputs are out of that city. So it's showing you that it's really not a sustainable system. It can't maintain itself. It doesn't have the resources to sustain itself. You have to get all of this stuff in, and you're not putting anything useful out.